The ship came down through orange clouds. It shook and rattled as it fell toward the surface of 7. Inside, 4 beings held tight to their seats. Was a human man. He was 32 years old with short black hair and tired eyes. He had been a soldier once, then a builder, and now he was a survey team member. His hands were rough from years of hard work. He watched the ground come closer through the small window. Next to him sat, she was a human woman younger than by 5 years. Her hair was long and tied back in a simple way. She was an engineer. She knew how to build things that lasted. She also knew how to fix things that broke. On a mission like this, both skills were important. Across from the humans sat 2. They were tall beings with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were large and black like pools of dark water. The first was called. He was the team leader. He had led many missions before this one. He was proud of his experience and his species' great technology. The other was. She was a scientist who studied planets. She had soft features for and spoke in a gentle voice. But she shared her people's belief that we're the most advanced species in the galaxy. The ship hit the ground hard. Dust flew up around them in a great cloud. When it settled, looked out the window at their new home for the next 30 days. 7 was not a beautiful place. The ground was brown and orange. Rocks stood up from the sand like broken teeth. The sky was the color of rust. 2 suns hung in that sky, one large and red, one small and white. The air outside was thin but breathable. The temperature was hot during the day and very cold at night. "We have arrived," said. His voice was deep and smooth. "Welcome to 7. This planet has valuable minerals deep underground. Our job is to survey the area and mark good places for mining." Nodded. He had heard this many times during the trip. He was already thinking about other things. He was thinking about shelter. The team walked down the ramp and onto the sandy ground. The hot air hit them like a wall, felt sweat form on his face immediately. He looked around at the landscape. Flat, open, exposed. "We should start setting up camp," said. She was looking at the same things was looking at. Her eyes were sharp and careful. Waved one of his 4 hands in the air. "There is no hurry. First, let me show you technology." He pressed a button on his wrist device. A small metal box flew out from the ship. It landed on the ground about 50 meters away. Then something amazing happened. The box opened and began to grow. Walls of shimmering energy rose up from it. In just 2 minutes, a beautiful dome of blue light stood on the sand. "This is an energy shelter," said proudly. "It creates its own atmosphere inside. It keeps out heat, cold, wind, and sand. It is powered by a fusion core that will last for 100 years. This is how civilized species make shelter." Smiled at the humans. "Is it not wonderful? You will be very comfortable inside." Looked at the glowing dome. It was impressive. He could not deny that, but something bothered him. He looked at the sky. He looked at the ground. He felt the wind on his face. "It's very nice," he said slowly, "but I think we should also build a backup shelter." Made a sound like laughing. "A backup? Why would we need that? The energy dome is perfect." "Nothing is perfect," said. "What if the power fails?" "The power will not fail," said. "Technology does not fail." Stepped forward. "We would feel better if we had something more, solid just in case." Looked confused. "Solid, you mean like dirt and rocks?" "Yes," said, "like dirt and rocks." The 2 looked at each other. Then they started to laugh. It was not mean laughter, but it was clear they thought the idea was silly. "Humans are so strange," said. "You have access to the most advanced technology in the galaxy, and you want to play in the dirt like children." Did not get angry. He had heard such words before. Many species in the galaxy looked down on humans. They thought humans were young and primitive. They did not understand human ways. "We will build our shelter over there," said. He pointed to a spot near a small hill. "You can use your dome. We will use both." Shook his head but did not argue. "Do as you wish. It is your time to waste." So the work began, and went into their beautiful energy dome. They set up their equipment and began their survey work. They had computers that could scan the ground and find minerals. They had machines that could test the air and water. Everything was clean and easy and comfortable. Meanwhile, and worked in the hot sun, they found a spot where the small hill would block some of the wind. Then they started to dig. Used a shovel from the ship, used a small digging machine. They dug down into the brown earth. The soil was hard at first, then softer below. They dug for hours. "Why do you dig so deep?" asked. She had come out to watch them. "You are already below ground level." "That's the point," said. She wiped sweat from her face. "Underground is safer." "Safer from what?" "From everything." Did not understand. She went back to the energy dome and told about the strange humans digging in the dirt. By the end of the first day, and had dug a large hole. It was 3 meters deep and 5 meters wide. Tomorrow they would start building walls. That night they all slept in the energy dome. It was cool and comfortable inside. The blue light was soft and pleasant. Admitted to himself that it was a nice place to sleep. But he still did not trust it. He lay awake for a long time, listening to the wind outside. The wind was not strong yet, but it was there, always there, whispering against the energy shield like a warning. Had been on many planets. He had seen many things go wrong. He had learned one important lesson from all his experiences. The universe did not care about technology. The universe did not care about pride. The universe only cared about survival. And survival meant being ready for anything. Tomorrow he would keep building, no matter what they said, no matter how much they laughed. His shelter would be ready. The second day on 7 was hotter than the first. The two suns rose together and beat down on the sandy ground. Heat waves danced in the air like ghosts. Woke up early. He ate a simple breakfast of protein bars and water. Then he went outside to continue his work. The hole they had dug yesterday was waiting for him. It looked like a wound in the orange earth. Joined him a few minutes later. She carried tools and bags of a special powder. The powder, when mixed with water, would make a kind of cement. It was old technology, simple technology, but it worked. "Ready?" she asked. "Always," said. They climbed down into the hole and began building walls. The walls would be made of local clay mixed with the cement powder. They had learned this method from old books. Humans had been building this way for thousands of years, long before they went to the stars. Came out of the energy dome around midday. He stood at the edge of the hole and looked down at the two humans. They were covered in dirt and sweat. Their clothes were stained with brown clay. They looked tired and uncomfortable. "This is sad to watch," said. He crossed two of his forearms. "You work so hard for something so small." Did not look up. He kept pressing clay into the wall frame. "Small things can save your life. My energy dome is not small. It is also much better than whatever you are making down there." Stopped working for a moment. She looked up with calm eyes. "Your dome is impressive, but it depends on one power source. If that power source fails, what do you have?" "It will not fail," said. "I have told you this. Technology is the best in the galaxy. We have been building energy shields for 10,000 years. We have never had one fail." "There is a first time for everything," said. Made that laughing sound again. "You humans are so worried all the time. You worry about things that will never happen. This is why your species is so slow to advance. You spend all your time preparing for disasters instead of reaching for greatness." Finally looked up. His face was serious. "Our species is still here. That is because we prepare. You are still here because other species allow it," said. "Do not forget that humans are newcomers to the galaxy. We were traveling between stars when your ancestors were still living in caves." "We remember our caves," said quietly. "That is why we survive." Did not understand what meant. He shook his head and walked back to his dome. Inside was working on her computer screens. She was analyzing data from the mineral scans. The humans are still playing in the dirt, told her. Looked up, perhaps we should not judge them so harshly. Every species has its own ways. Their ways are primitive. They are wasting time they could use for the survey work. They seem very serious about it. They are serious about a pile of mud. That is the problem with humans. They put effort into the wrong things. Turned back to her screens. She did not want to argue with, but she had noticed something in the weather data that morning. Something that made her think about the humans and their strange shelter. Outside and worked through the hottest part of the day. They took breaks to drink water and rest in the shade of the hill, but they did not stop for long. There was too much work to do. By afternoon, the walls were taking shape. They rose up from the bottom of the hole like growing teeth. The clay was drying in the hot sun, becoming hard as stone. Tested it with his knuckle. Solid. Good. We need to make the roof strong, he said. Very strong. I know, said. I have been thinking about that. We can use metal sheets from the ship's spare parts, layer them with clay and sand. Heavy. Heavy is good, heavy stays down. They worked on the roof supports next. These were thick beams made from a lightweight metal. The ship carried them for emergency repairs, had asked the captain for permission to use them. The captain, who was still in orbit above the planet, had agreed. He trusted its judgment. Watched from the dome as the humans dragged the heavy beams to their hole. He could not believe they were doing so much work by hand. Why didn't they use the ship's machines? Why didn't they use anti-gravity lifters? The answer was simple, but did not think of it. The humans wanted their shelter to need nothing. No power, no machines, nothing that could break or fail. That evening came out to look at the human shelter. The walls were almost complete now. The whole had become a room. It was not pretty. It was not elegant, but it was solid. May I ask you something? Said Tu. Nodded. She was sitting on a rock, eating dinner from a metal container. Why do you do this? The energy dome is safe. It is comfortable. Why work so hard to build something from dirt? Thought for a moment before answering. Have you ever been in a disaster? What do you mean? A real disaster. A moment when everything goes wrong, when all your plans fail, when your technology stops working. Shook her head slowly. No, our technology does not stop working. Then you are lucky. Humans have not been so lucky. Our history is full of disasters, floods, fires, storms, wars. We have lost everything many times. Each time we learned something. What did you learn? Looked at the shelter she and were building. We learned that the simple things last. A wall of stone will stand when a wall of light falls. A hole in the ground will protect you when a tower collapses. We do not trust things that need power. We trust things that need nothing. Was quiet for a long time. She looked at the shelter with new eyes. It was still ugly. It was still primitive. But now she saw something else in it. She saw thousands of years of human pain and survival. She saw lessons written in dirt and clay. I think I understand a little, she said finally. Smiled, maybe, or maybe you will understand more later. That night could not sleep again. He walked outside and looked at the sky. The stars were bright and beautiful, but he was not looking at the stars. He was looking at the horizon. There was something there, a darkness that was not quite right, a thickness in the air that he could feel more than see. He had felt this before on other planets. It was the feeling of something coming, something big. He went to the ship and checked the weather sensors. The data made him frown. Atmospheric pressure was stable for now, but there were readings from far away, readings that showed movement, big movement. He did not wake anyone, not yet. There was no point in causing worry over something that might not happen, but he made a decision. Tomorrow they would work faster. The roof had to be finished. The door had to be sealed. The ventilation shafts had to be protected. Their shelter had to be ready. Because feelings were rarely wrong. And right now, His feelings were telling him that this planet was about to show them something terrible. He went back to the energy dome and lay down on his sleeping mat, but he did not close his eyes for a long time. Above him, the blue light of the shield hummed softly. It was beautiful. It was advanced. It was everything that believed in. Hoped it would be enough. But he did not believe it would be. The third morning came with a strange color in the sky. The normal rust orange had turned to a deep red. The two suns looked dim behind a thin haze that covered everything. Was already working when the others woke up. He had started before dawn, using small lights to see. The roof of the shelter was almost finished. Heavy metal sheets lay across the thick beams. On top of the metal was packing layer after layer of clay and sand. Came out and saw what he was doing. She did not ask questions. She understood immediately. She grabbed tools and climbed up to help him. They worked in silence. The only sounds were their breathing and the scraping of their tools. Something had changed in the air. They could both feel it, a pressure, a warning. Came out of the energy dome at his usual time. He stretched his forearms and looked at the sky. Strange color today, he said to no one. Must be some kind of atmospheric dust. He walked toward the ship to get his equipment for the day's survey work. As he passed the human shelter, he stopped to look. The thing was almost complete now. It looked like a small hill made by some kind of animal. There was a thick door made of metal. There were small pipes sticking up from the roof. Ventilation shafts, he assumed. You are almost done with your mud house, he called out to the humans. Did not answer, he kept working. I must say, it is impressive in its own way. For a primitive structure, perhaps you can sell it to some native creatures when we leave. Still no answer. Frowned, the humans were being rude. He decided to ignore them and continued walking to the ship. Inside the ship was already at the weather station. She had been there since early morning, watching the data change. Her large black eyes were wide with concern. She said when he entered, I need to show you something. What is it? She pointed at the screen. Numbers and graphs filled the display. Most of it meant nothing too. He was a team leader, not a scientist, but he understood enough to see that something was different. The atmospheric pressure is dropping, said. It has dropped by 8% since yesterday. What does that mean? It means air is moving. A lot of air moving fast. Looked at the screen more carefully. A storm. More than a storm, look at this. She pressed some buttons and a new image appeared. It was a satellite view of the planet. Far to the east, there was a massive brown cloud. It covered an area larger than some countries on their home world. What is that? Sand, said. Sand and wind, moving this direction. Felt something cold in his stomach, but he pushed the feeling away. How bad is it? I do not know. I have never seen anything like this. The wind speed readings are. They must be wrong. The sensors must be broken. What do the readings say? Paused. They say the wind is moving at 400 kilometers per hour and getting faster. Was silent. 400 kilometers per hour was not a storm. It was destruction. Nothing could survive in winds that fast. Nothing could stand. But then he remembered the energy dome. The dome could survive anything. It was technology, the best in the galaxy. We will be fine, he said, trying to sound confident. The dome will protect us. Are you sure? I am sure. The dome has survived plasma attacks. It has survived meteor strikes. It will survive some wind and sand. Nodded slowly. She wanted to believe him, but she kept looking at the satellite image. The brown cloud was getting closer every minute. Outside had also seen the data. She had her own small weather device, a simple human tool that showed basic information. The readings were alarming. She said quietly, how much time do we have? Looked at the sky. The haze was getting thicker. The red color was getting darker. He could feel the wind changing. It was still gentle now, but there was a new force behind it, a new anger. Maybe 6 hours, he said, maybe less. The shelter is not finished. Then we finish it. They worked faster than before. There was no time for breaks, no time for food or water. They sealed every crack in the walls with clay. They piled more sand on the roof. They tested the door again and again, making sure it would close tight. Came out of the ship. He looked at the humans running around their shelter like scared animals. He should warn them, he thought. They should know what is coming. Humans, he called out. There is a storm approaching, a large one. You should come to the energy dome. Stopped working for a moment. How large? Very large. Wind speeds of 400 kilometers per hour, maybe more. Nodded slowly. Thank you for the warning, but we will stay here. In that pile of dirt, you will be killed. We will see. Made a frustrated sound. Do not be stupid. The dome is the only safe place. Your shelter will be torn apart. Looked at with calm eyes. Your dome, how thick is the energy shield? What? The energy shield, how thick is it? Did not understand the question. It is not measured in thickness. It is energy, pure force. Energy needs power. What happens if the storm damages the power source? The power source is inside the dome. It cannot be damaged. What about the generator that creates the shield? Is that inside too? Opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. The shield generator was at the base of the dome. It was protected by a metal casing, but it was not inside the energy shield. It could not be. The generator had to be outside to create the shield. The casing is very strong, he said finally. It will not be damaged. Strong enough to survive 400-kilometer winds, with sand hitting it like bullets. Did not answer. He looked back at the energy dome. It stood there glowing blue and beautiful. It looked invincible. But now he saw what was seeing. He saw the small metal box at the bottom, the box that made everything work, the box that was exposed to the outside. Come inside anyway, he said, his voice less confident now, just in case. Shook his head. There is no room in your dome for us and our supplies. If something goes wrong, we need food and water and medicine. Those things are in our shelter. Then bring them to the dome. There is no time. Was right. The sky was getting darker by the minute. The wind was getting stronger. In the distance, they could hear a sound, a low roaring, like some giant animal waking up and getting angry. Finish the door seal, said Tu. I will check the ventilation filters. They went back to work, watched them for a moment longer, then turned and walked quickly to the energy dome. Inside was waiting. Her face showed fear. The storm will be here in 2 hours, she said, maybe less. Looked around the dome. It was comfortable and clean and full of advanced equipment, everything a could want. But for the first time, he noticed how thin the energy walls looked, how much they depended on that one small generator outside. We will be fine, he said again. But this time, he did not believe it. The roaring in the distance was getting louder, closer, and it did not sound like wind anymore. It sounded like the end of the world. The storm came like nothing they had ever seen. First, there was the darkness. The red sky turned brown, then black. The two suns disappeared completely, swallowed by the wall of sand that was racing toward them. It was so tall that it seemed to reach into space, so wide that there was no end to it in any direction. Then came the sound. It was not just loud, it was everything. It filled the world and pushed out all other sounds. A roaring, screaming, howling noise that made cover her ears and close her eyes. Inside the energy dome, watched the storm approach. For a moment he felt no fear. The dome looked so strong. The blue light glowed steadily, calmly. Surely nothing could break through that. Then the first wave of sand hit. The dome shook. Not a little shake, but a violent one that knocked off his feet. He fell to the ground and felt the whole structure move around him. The blue light flickered. What was that? Screamed. Just the first impact, said. He tried to stand up, but another wave of sand hit them. The dome shook again. The light flickered again, longer this time. Outside, the world had disappeared. There was only sand now. Sand moving so fast that it did not look like sand anymore. It looked like water, like a great brown ocean was washing over them. The dome's energy shield made a sound, a high, sharp sound that hurt their ears. It was the sound of pure force hitting pure force. The storm versus the technology, nature versus progress. For a few minutes, the dome held. The shield pushed back against the sand and wind. The generator at the base worked hard, pumping power into the barrier. The metal casing around it began to heat up from the friction of millions of sand particles hitting it every second. Watched his equipment screens. Power levels were dropping faster than he had ever seen. The generator was using energy at an impossible rate, trying to keep the shield strong. At this rate, they would run out of power in hours, maybe less. The shield is failing, said. Her voice was shaking. It will hold. Look at the numbers, it will not hold. Did not want to look, but he did. The numbers told a story of defeat, power dropping, shield strength dropping, heat levels rising, everything going in the wrong direction. Then they heard a new sound, a grinding, tearing sound, metal on sand, metal losing. The generator casing was being worn away. The sand was acting like a million tiny knives, cutting through the protective shell, bit by bit, grain by grain. The shield flickered more often now. Sometimes it went dark for a whole second before coming back. We need to get out of here, said. Where would we go? Looked in the direction of the human shelter. She could not see it, could not see anything through the brown darkness, but she knew it was there. The humans, she said. We go to the humans. Felt shame burn in his chest. The humans and their pile of dirt, the primitive structure that he had laughed at. Now it was their only hope. We cannot go out there, he said. The wind will kill us in seconds. Then we die here when the dome falls. The dome shook again, harder than before. Cracks appeared in the energy shield, actual cracks like glass breaking. Sand started to come through just a little at first, a few grains here and there, but it was enough to tell them the truth. The shield was dying. We have to try, said. Help me. They gathered what they could: water containers, medical supplies, emergency blankets. They tied everything together and tied it to themselves. They put on their breathing masks and protective goggles. Then they waited for a pause in the wind. It came after a few minutes, not a real pause, just a moment when the screaming became a roar, when the sand slowed from impossible to just deadly. Now, said. He pressed the button to open the dome door. Sand poured in like water from a broken dam, but they pushed through it. They stepped out into the storm. The wind hit like a giant fist. He fell immediately. The sand tore at his skin and clothes. He could not see, could not breathe, could not think. He only knew one thing: move forward, move toward the human shelter. Grabbed his arm. She was stronger than she looked. Together they crawled through the sand. Every meter was a battle. The wind pushed them back. The sand tried to bury them, but they kept moving. Behind them, the energy dome gave one final flicker and died. The blue light disappeared. The shield fell. Without protection, the structure inside was torn apart in seconds. Equipment flew through the air like leaves. The beautiful technology became garbage. Heard it happen even through the storm. He heard his pride die with it. They crawled for what felt like hours. It was probably only minutes. Time meant nothing in the brown darkness. Distance meant nothing. There was only forward, only survival. Then's hand touched something solid, a wall of clay and stone that did not move in the wind. That did not shake or flicker, it just stood there, strong, simple, stubborn. Here, she screamed. The door must be here. They felt along the wall. The sand was piling up around them. Soon they would be buried, soon they would suffocate. But then's hand found metal, A handle, a door. He pulled, the door did not move. The pressure outside was too strong, or maybe it was locked from inside. He pulled harder, nothing. Then suddenly the door opened. A hand reached out and grabbed him, a human hand, and fell into the shelter. The door slammed shut behind them. The sound of the storm became quiet, not silent but quiet, like an angry animal that could not reach them anymore. Lay on the ground, breathing hard. Sand fell off his body in small avalanches. His skin was raw. His eyes were full of grit, but he was alive. Welcome, said. His voice was calm. Sorry about the mess. Looked around. The shelter was small and dark. A single light hung from the ceiling. The walls were rough clay. The floor was packed dirt. There was nothing elegant or beautiful about it. But the walls did not shake. The light did not flicker. The storm raged outside and nothing happened. Nothing at all. Helped to a sitting position. She gave her water and cleaned the sand from her face. Was crying, not from pain but from relief, from the joy of still being alive. How did you know we would come? Asked. We saw the dome fall, said. We were watching through the ventilation periscope. You saw that? Yes, we hoped you would make it here. Looked at the clay walls again. They were ugly. They were primitive. They were the most beautiful things he had ever seen. We were wrong, he said quietly. I was wrong. Did not answer. He just handed a container of water and went back to checking the ventilation filters. Outside, the storm continued to scream, but inside the human shelter there was peace. There was safety. There was something that was only beginning to understand. There was wisdom. The storm lasted for 3 days. For 3 days, the 4 beings sat in the small shelter and listened to the world try to tear itself apart. The sound never stopped. Sometimes it was louder, sometimes softer, but it was always there, a constant reminder of what waited outside. Inside, they learned to live together. The shelter was small for 4 people, especially when 2 of those people had 4 arms each. They had to sit close. They had to share everything: food, water, air. There was no room for pride or distance. On the first day, they mostly slept. The escape from the dome had exhausted, and their bodies needed rest. Their minds needed time to accept what had happened. They slept on simple mats on the dirt floor, covered by emergency blankets, while and took turns watching the ventilation system. On the second day, they started talking. Asked about human history. She wanted to understand why humans built the way they built, why they thought the way they thought, told her stories. Stories about floods that covered cities, about earthquakes that broke mountains, about fires that ate forests whole. Every generation learned something, said. Every disaster taught us a lesson. We wrote those lessons down. We passed them to our children. The lessons became part of who we are. But you have advanced technology now, said. Surely you do not need the old ways anymore. We have technology, but technology can fail. It needs power. It needs maintenance. It needs things to go right. The old ways need nothing. That is why we keep them. Listened from his corner of the shelter. He did not speak much during those 3 days. He was thinking, remembering, questioning everything he had believed. He thought about his training, his education, his whole life he had been taught that technology was the answer to everything. That problems were solved by building better machines, better shields, better systems. He had never been taught to dig in the dirt, to trust in simple things, to prepare for the worst. On the 3rd day, the storm began to die. The sound grew quieter. The shelter stopped vibrating. The air coming through the ventilation became cleaner. Went to the door and listened. It's almost over, he said. Maybe a few more hours. They waited, patient, calm. They had food for many more days, water for weeks. There was no rush. The storm would end when it ended. Finally, it was quiet, not silent. The wind still blew softly outside, but the screaming was gone. The rage was spent. 7 had finished its tantrum. opened the door slowly. Sand poured in, but only a little. The storm had buried them partially. The door was half covered. They dug their way out. It took an hour of hard work. But finally they stood on the surface of a changed world. Everything was different. The land had moved. Hills had become valleys. Valleys had become hills. The ship was half buried in a new dune, but its systems were still working. It had survived because it was designed for space, designed to handle anything. The energy dome was gone, not damaged, not broken, gone. There was nothing left but scattered pieces of metal and plastic. The beautiful technology had been erased from the world, as if it had never existed. Stood where the dome had been. He looked at the sand beneath his feet. Somewhere down there were his computers, his equipment, his pride. All of it ground to dust. All of it worthless now. "I am sorry," said, walking up beside him. "I know you lost much." Shook his head slowly. "I lost things, you saved lives, that is not the same." He turned to face the human. For the first time he looked at not as a primitive creature, but as an equal, maybe more than equal. "How did you know?" asked. "How did you know the dome would fail?" Thought about the question. "I did not know for certain. I never know anything for certain. That is the point. I do not understand." Your species believes in certainty. You believe your technology will always work. You believe your shields will always hold. You believe you can control nature, but nature does not care about your beliefs. It does what it wants. Looked at the buried shelter. Only the ventilation pipes were visible above the sand. Everything else was underground, protected, safe. "Humans do not believe in certainty," he continued. "We believe in possibility. We believe that anything can go wrong, so we prepare for everything. We build shelters that need no power. We store food that needs no refrigeration. We learn skills that need no machines. When everything fails, we still survive." Was quiet for a long time. The wind blew around them, gentle now, almost apologetic. "I have traveled to many worlds," said finally. "I have met many species. I have always thought humans were the weakest, the most primitive, the least advanced. I was wrong about that too." "We are not the strongest," said. She had joined them, followed by. "We are not the fastest but we are still here. After millions of years, we are still here." How has your species survived so long?" Smiled. "Because we never forget that we can die. Every other species in the galaxy seems to forget that. They build great cities and great machines and think they are immortal. Then something happens, a disease, a war, a storm, and they are gone." "But humans remember," said. "We remember every disaster, every failure, every near extinction. We carry those memories in our bones. They make us careful, they make us humble, they keep us alive." Stepped forward. Her eyes were different now. The superior look was gone. In its place was something new: curiosity, respect, wonder. "Would you teach me?" she asked. "Would you teach me your old ways? I want to understand, I want to learn." And looked at each other. A small smile passed between them. "We would be happy to teach you," said. "But the lessons are hard. You will get dirty, you will get tired, you will have to use your hands." Held up her 4 hands. "I have plenty of those." Even smiled at that. It was a small smile, a humble smile, very different from his proud expressions of before. The survey mission continued for another 3 weeks, but it was different now. The team worked together in new ways and helped dig. They helped build. They helped carry heavy things and mix clay and seal walls. Taught them how to find water underground, how to predict weather by watching the sky, how to start a fire without machines. Old human knowledge passed to new students. When the ship finally lifted off from 7, looked down at the surface. He could see the human shelter, still standing strong beside the rebuilt survey station. It would stay there forever, probably. Long after the machines broke down. Long after the technology turned to dust. "A monument," said, looking at the same view. "To what?" asked. to humility, to survival, to the wisdom of simple things. Nodded, he thought about the report he would write, the report that would change how thought about humans. It would not be an easy report. His people would not want to hear that their technology had failed, that primitive methods had saved them, that they had much to learn from the young species they had always looked down upon. But it was the truth, and the truth, like a shelter made of clay, could not be blown away by any storm. Far below, the human shelter sat in the sand, silent, patient, ready for the next storm, ready for whatever the universe would send. Because that was what humans did. They survived. And sometimes, survival was the greatest achievement of all.